Welcome to South Asian Environment Dialogue. All of you who see this program every week, you know that this is a program, one of its kind program in South Asia, where we discuss a range of issues on environment, on climate change, on developmental scenario. And today we are going to discuss an issue which pertains to India, a state of India, but that has caught the imagination of the entire world. You all know that in the West Bengal state of India, Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress has won the last election quite handsomely, despite a fierce opposition by BJP, who is ruling India, and despite its Prime Minister, Home Minister, and everybody around trying to bulldoze a win. Mamata Banerjee won the election. Now, there have been various reasons why Mamata Banerjee has won. But one point is coming out. Mamata Banerjee, during the last 10 years, has undertaken a slew of developmental initiatives, many of them linking with the women. Now, there are also various reservations. There are complaints of corruption and everything. But end of the day, does these developmental initiatives, do they matter? Have they mattered in the election? That's a question we are trying to probe today. And we have a fascinating panel to talk about the issue. Before that, let me reiterate that this program is brought on by the Climate Channel Canada in collaboration with the Plurals media platform and also the noTVbangla, having more than 80,000 subscribers. And this is our 30th episode. We have been doing this program for the last 6-7 months, and I believe that we will continue to do this program. Now today, as I said, we are going to discuss about the role of developmental initiatives in electoral politics. And we have a fascinating panel to discuss that. I have with me Kumar Rana. Kumar Rana is a research activist. Till recently, he was very integral part of Protichi Institute, led by Professor Amartya Sen. And he's an academician. He writes prolifically on the issues of development, gender, education, everything. So it's extremely welcome, Dr. Rana. It's really a privilege to have you in the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have with me Professor Imtiaz Ahmed. Professor Ahmed is the professor of international relations in Dhaka University, a frontline academician in South Asia, has innumerable books. I don't know the number of books. He can only say that. Perhaps he doesn't know himself on various developmental aspects. And I know that his knowledge is so profound. So really from Professor Ahmed, I would like to know this development versus electoral politics, how it pans out in the overall in the South Asia. I have with me Professor Mahalaya Chatterjee. Professor Chatterjee is also a professor of economics, urban economics, to say more specifically, in Calcutta University, in Calcutta University, we call it Calcutta University, and she specializes in the urban economics part, and really we would like to know from him how this whole program of so-called development, quote unquote, panned out in the urban sector. Welcome, Professor Chatterjee, to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Bosch, for calling me.
It's a privilege. And I have with me my media colleague, Swati Bhattacharjee, a very, very well-known name to the Bengalis, not only, I think, in West Bengal or India, but across the world, because she is part of a major national media. She writes on poverty alleviation, on gender issues, on related various other developmental factors. And Swati, I think it's a complete privilege to have you. Really looking forward to your view. It is the last election in particular, and overall electoral politics versus development and developments in general. Welcome, Swati.
Thank you, sir.
So that's the premise being said. So let me start with Kumar Rana, perhaps. This last election, we look at the data, we find that Trinamool Congress has won 213 seats, 213 out of 292 seats which went into poll. And it got 47.9% polled votes. which actually is larger than the vote being polled during the 2016 election and definitely over 2019 parliament election. And it is despite all these factors, all these corruption points, all this high volume bulldozing BJP campaign and everything else. And now there are so many factors, as I was saying on the outset, but how important the developmental initiatives of Mamata Banerjee in procuring her this win? On the general, let us start with this very open-ended question and then we'll go into the particular. Kumar, Professor Rana.
Well, I'm one qualification. I am not a professor, and I have not done a PhD.
You are more than any professor. So
okay. So okay. And now, the thing is that whether I have reservation on the term developmental programs. So there are many social assistance programs that the Mamata Banerjee government has been taking and have been implementing for the last 10 years. They are really very good programs. The programs, if you take it some bit theoretically, you can call something like in Rawlsian line, which is for a social minimum. And now there is a problem with the social minimum and the development thing, because development it's a larger area, much larger area. So so when people are when some of the programs or many of the programs are very enabling, like the food programs or the bicycle programs, they are very enabling. But on the other hand, there are political programs of the same party which are very restricting in terms of freedom, in terms of people's say negative freedom, negative freedom, you can say. So I have that reservation. So I take this as some sort of assistance programs, which is a very generally accepted term across the world. So now these social assistance programs, so there are two lines of argument. One is that you have the social assistance programs are taken from a normative point of view, that you need these for the people on the line of social justice. And there are other programs, there is another notion which talks about the instrumental value of the programs. Okay.
Overall, what do you feel?
Overall, I think that for this particular election or the previous elections, I have been following this since 2013 Panchayat election. And Mamata Banerjee won the 2013 Panchayat election if we say there was a huge impact of the food program that she took in 2011 after coming to power, that which had a huge impact on the election results of 2013 election.
We'll perhaps probe into further details, because really I would be because I know that there's the issue of Shastro Sathi card. There's the issue of Duare Sarkar. Those are basically programs being taken the last part of the Mamata's last tenure. So we'll be coming to that, but let us first have a quick round to know everybody's view on that. And I would like to go, before I go to the West Bengal in particular, let's go to Imtiaz Ahmed. Professor Ahmed, what's your understanding? You must have been following this election. I think people across, I saw in the New York Times the next day that page one, the West Bengal election has been covered. So that's something unusual. So what's your take on that? How you feel about this particular developmental program mattered in the election?
Thank you very much. If you take democracy as a model as it has evolved in the West, you can easily see that the West could do certain things mainly because they had colonialism and they had slavery. And that's precisely the reason why they could enrich themselves and reproduce democracy. Democracy before First World War, it was non-existent. I would say it became, a little bit of a reality in Europe and the West in the mid-60s after the decolonization. Because if you have colonialism, you can't have democracy in the first place. Let's be honest on that. So they had this primitive accumulation, with all the resources coming from different parts of the world, and for which actually the people were happy. And, so you have a development, not to mention the roads and, the infrastructure, you talk about Paris, you talk about London, you talk about New York, all were based on primitive accumulation to begin with. Now here in South Asia, you have a different kind of a structure altogether historically. You can't have development as the West had. So what are you going to do? So I think it's a serious problem, because there will be an issue of corruption, no doubt about that. But development, whether it's a highway or whether it's a bridge, they attract people. One cannot say no. It attracts people. But in the context of Mamata Banerjee, particularly West Bengal, as I read a little bit of what's happening in India, one can see, and I think Mr. Rana has rightly pointed out, that her focus on, which would be Trinamool, on the grassroots kind of activities, that I think pushed her, solidified her position. Because as Mr. Rana rightly pointed out, when you have development, you immediately have a kind of, an hierarchy. Where the money goes to the rich and doesn't, the development really doesn't help the poverty-stricken people. But here, I think Mamata made a difference, going into the grassroots, keeping, absolutely the name of the party, and of course, attracting.
So you feel the development actually mattered in the election? Attracting
the minorities always in that social, social minimum program that Mr. Rana was talking about. I totally agree. But as I said, you can't throw away development. You need to be very smart in doing it. In different countries, I think, did it differently. Mamata did it differently as well.
And very interestingly, that that corruption point that has come up against Mamata, often being a kind of a takeoff from the developmental programs. So it's a very interesting paradox in a way, that the developmental program and also having its corruption points. So that's a point being made by many, that actually many people actually got advantage of that. So let's go to Shati, because I know Shati covers this very closely, especially in the rural, peri-urban West Bengal. And Shati, I really would like to bring another point with the issue of women. If we look at the Mamata's advantage, Mamata Banerjee's 2M factor was Muslim vote and Mahila vote, women vote. And all the surveys showed that really the women had voted more in favor of Mamata Banerjee. So, and I was looking at the comparative voting of women and men percentage over the few years. Now, the last election in 2021, women voting percentage, not the gross number, but the percentage, actually has taken over from the males. So that's a very interesting part. People may say that males are away from Kolkata or West Bengal in search of jobs. That's a different question. But what's your take on that, Shati? How development mattered in the last election?
Social assistance programs, as Kumar Rana rightly said, has really mattered a lot in this election. And certainly women who at the end of the day have to provide food, have to feed the family, have to run the home, and who, as you rightly say, that when their husbands are away, the men in the family are away, they are completely in charge of the day-to-day running of the family. So what they need, and what Mamata has really been able to provide to a large extent, is a responsive government. So the governance is responsive, and as Mr. Rana has rightly pointed out, and Imtiaz was also saying this, that, in many ways, what we find here is not a democratic government. Has Mamta respected women's right to self-determination, their right to participation? No. Women in the Panchayat elections of 2018, women were beaten up. So let's have no particular, misty-eyed thing about Mamta that she is a great liberal thing about women. She is not. But we live in a state which is poor, where income generally is much lower than the rest of India, particularly North and West India. So in these poor households, there are things, even small things, which women need to do. It's a great burden for them. And at the same time, they have aspirations that their children should go to school wearing shoes, carrying a bag. And these are things with Mamta. She is a populist. It's said that she's populist, but it's also true that she has huge political acumen. She has her finger on people's pulse, and she knows exactly what would give people not only sustenance, but a sense of dignity. And she has played her cards very well. And because of that, despite BJP's huge publicity machine, Mamta forced the BJP to change their rhetoric and bring the entire thing to the government assistance programs. And that, I think, is the very, very remarkable achievement.
And she played her card. To also find out that these particular factors, I am expecting Biswanath Chakrabarty to join, that Mamata Banerjee got around 5% to 6% more votes compared to 2019 election. And now these votes have come from various sources. Many feel the social assisted programs contributed to that. I just shared a 30-second story to all of you because Shati kind of triggered me telling that story. I was covering Bankura district, very, very deep into Bankura, Ranibagh. There's a block called Ranibagh. Even 80 kilometers inside of Ranibagh, there's a village called and there's a small tribal hamlet. One tribal woman came up and told me one line where I understood how the transformation has happened. She said in Bengali, I have purchased a photo mobile. A tribal woman saying that she has purchased something for her husband, not the other way around, and that's to a mobile with which can click photo. And she also said that I am paying 3,000 rupees per month for the education of my son. I am paying. She's saying I am paying. So that's it. I was completely amazed by this whole confidence on the transformation. So yes, Shati, I completely go with you that Mamata Banerjee has a point on the exact point, but I'll come back to you to really discuss in depth about this Shastro Shati program or Duare Sarkar program, which many feel are the kind of game changer. But let's go back to Kumar Rana here. That Mr. Rana, what do you feel? You feel that this programs, many feel that Prashant Kishore, who is the political analyst or the political kind of strategist for Mamata Banerjee, has brought on this issue of Duare Sarkar, means that government at your door, or Shastro Shati, the health card, universal health card, free health service. Did they really make a change post 2019?
I don't think so. I think what Prashant Kishore has done, basically what CPM's local committee used to do in the past.
I'm just interrupting you just a second. I'm expecting Biswanath Chakrabarty to join. If Biswanath Chakrabarty joins, please unmute your audio and video so that I can know that you are there and then we can get off. Sorry to interrupt you. Please go ahead.
So no, what Prashant Kishore's team did, actually, it is what the CPM's local committee used to do in the mid-80s. I mean, they used to, feedback, this is happening at the grassroots level kind of thing. it's not that Duare Sarkar and all these things are Prashant Kishore's range. Because much before Prashant Kishore's arrival in the scene, Mamata has been doing these things. I mean, go back to 2013. The whole lot of difference that 2013 election did so I bring out another point that in 2013 election, there were violence, and in West Bengal, exactly 13% of the seats went uncontested, one uncontested by Trinamool Congress, which was the figure that Left Front won in 2003. But you see, you look at Jungle Mahal, where there was no violence. I mean, the violence was there in 2008, but 2013, there was no violence. CPM could field their candidates. BJP could field their candidates. Okay, and despite that, Mamata won. It was just a cakewalk for Mamata. So, and similar thing happens in 2016 election in North Bengal. So Mamata has been doing these things. From 2011. So, and there are other people which we know that it's not just Prashant Kishore. There are other people like the bureaucrats and others. So simply the social welfare department or the backward classes welfare department. Okay, it has, before the election, it has distributed 1 million caste certificates. Okay. 1 million. So these things matter. I mean, people are getting something in hand. So, and I was talking with Jungle Mahal people. Because of Corona, I could not go to the villages much, but Jungle Mahal people. So one thing actually, I found a huge contrast in perception of the people that someone said, yes, the BJP is promising something, but Mamata did actually execute something. BJP promised us Ujjwala gas. So that was a one-time thing. We got the connection, but we do not have the money to refill it. But now Mamata is doing at least something. So these sort of comparisons.
That comparison is here.
So that people are, that comparison here.
In fact, I'll come to that comparison.
From these programs, there is
I'll be coming to that comparison. But let's very quickly take Mahaladi's view, because I come back. Mahaladi, you have been working in the urban setup, more in the urban setup and urban poverty. This election, Mamata Banerjee has a huge support from the urban areas. Look at Kolkata and look at Howrah. Kolkata out of 11 seats, all 11. Howrah out of 16 seats, all 16. And also the kind of ring of areas around Kolkata, Howrah, the Kolkata metropolitan area, she did really, really well. So how that explains? There are so many issues in the urban areas.
Actually, 60% in Kolkata. 60%.
60%.
Huge.
Okay. So,
60%.
Mahaladi, what do you feel about it? That how does development matter in urban areas as well?
Just let me go back a bit before coming into this particular election. When we talk about development management, we start with the issue why development has to be managed, especially when we are talking about market development and others, why development has to be managed. Now, and in that we talk about that market cannot do everything, because there are people who cannot simply enter the market because they do not have the purchasing power, they do not have the ample income to enter the market. So in comparing, to go back to that, urban areas are much better than rural areas in terms of purchasing and others. And there is a long debate that whereas in a village, in a rural area in the West Bengal, or say in a greater sense in India, you need more of development management compared to the urban areas. So in that sense, some of Mamata Banerjee's project like Rupasri, Konyasri, etc., they were overlapping. They were also for urban areas. The Kolkata colleges or the urban colleges also had their students who got the money for Konyasri and others. But in urban area, being a monetized economy and others, you see that in our income structure and others, there are scenarios for vulnerable and marginalized people. And I think that I don't know that what will actually happen to this Shastro Shati card or anything. What will future provide us, that whether it will work or not. But at least the promise that you will get 5 lakhs rupees of insurance for health, that worked a lot. That
exactly.
That was an
That's also an acknowledgement. That's also an acknowledgement. I think Shati was perhaps talking about the responsive government. The government is acknowledging my problem. I have some issues with health and government is providing me a card. So that's also an acknowledgement, some kind of a dignity to the people. Whether that will work or not, that's a different issue. So anything particular on the slum areas, Mahalaya, you feel like that?
Not to forget that this particular election was preceded by the pandemic and the Amphan and others. Now, I am not saying that they did the best thing, but there was help from the squad councillors and coordinators, local council coordinators, coordinators. That mattered a lot. That providing milk and bread in the morning and something in the evening. Of course, that mattered. Something was followed from something. Okay.
Great. I'll come back to that. Biswanath Chakrabarty has joined, political analyst, election analyst, and poll analyst. Biswanath Chakrabarty, welcome, Biswanath Babu, in the program. So we were discussing before we joined that how this development mattered in the last election. Now, you are the person who are having the figure. You did all those opinion polls and others. So tell us what's your finding about the developmental program, be it Duare Sarkar, be it Shastro Shati, be it Konyasri, be it Rupasri. People say that from birth to death, even after death, cremation, Mamata has a program for everything. So how those programs mattered in the last election result?
And to the election result always not is based on arithmetics. Sure. It is basically the outcome of chemistry. The chemistry that actually give the figure, that give the arithmetics. So definitely development was one important aspect. Development and because through different individual scheme, Mamata Bandyopadhyay government has established a patron-client relationship with a huge number of voters. So there is a patron-client relationship. So definitely that helped Mamata to come in third time in West Bengal. But this is not simple. The thing that I can say that it is only that patron-client relationship that gives the result. It actually, the identity politics that actually shaped the result in this year. It is identity. Why I'm saying time and time it is identity politics, because first time I noticed that all the identities has been surfaced from last 1 year or more, I can say more than 1 year. It's not only simply Hindu and Muslim identity. Even within the Hindu identity, again Motua, Bagdi, Namashudro, the Adivasi, Dalit, Rajbangshi community.
But Mr. Chakrabarty, BJP also played on those identities. Then how come Mamata took advantage of it?
My question is not important BJP or Trinamool or CPM or as a political analyst. I have no value laden. I'm not adhered to any political party. The thing is that I have clearly observed that all the political party, even left political party, they also utilize the identity politics. When left has taken a decision that they will consider ISF as their partner, immediately I noticed they also trying to address the identity politics.
Identity politics
that largely determine the West Bengal
election. So you feel that identity politics has really played a key role in this electoral results last night.
Very important.
I'll come back to you to discuss about the issues of the women, because you were telling me that women had voted much more in number and they are more in favor of Trinamool. Why it happened? Did those development programs matter? But before that, let me go to Professor Ahmed. Professor Ahmed, we are looking to through the glass of West Bengal election, but you have this wider perspective of South Asia. And South Asian developmental scenario, I was very interesting. I know that all of you know that, but let me kind of, in the Sustainable Development Goals scorecard, if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals scorecard, SDG scorecard, Mamta is actually a bit ahead of Modi, because both India and West Bengal score is 60, but in the last 2 years, Mamta's West Bengal has progressed much steeply in comparison to the Indian overall score. And look at poverty alleviation, look at hunger, look at health, look at all these factors. West Bengal is ahead of Modi's Indian score. In poverty, Modi 50, West Bengal, Mamta 52. Hunger 35-40, health 61-70. That's the latest score of 2020, what I have with me right now. And this is the score being given by Niti Aayog, which is presided by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So it's nothing unofficial about those figures. So do you feel that this kind of sustainable development goal, addressing the issues, giving people 5 rupees food, do they really matter at the end of the day? Imtiaz?
Thank you. Well, it does, no doubt about it. You know, if you take Bangladesh's case and if you take the ruling party's position, whatever may be some of the problems that the party has, but overall, the kind of the Human Development Index, Bangladesh has been quite aggressive on that. In this region, Amartya Sen long back pointed this out. Nobody took cognizance of that when he was pointing out. Now, the world actually appreciates some of the programs, you know, and you may have some limitations on the issue of freedom and democracy. Those are there, you know. As I said, you cannot have the same model as West could, you know, they can afford because their trajectory was different. But it helps immensely. The power, even if you come to Bangladesh, you will see our villages are more, I would say, vibrant. They are more green. They're more clean. You know, that's the important part, which is very different from many parts of South Asia. But if you take other, you know, let's take Sri Lanka's case, for example. You know, we had a little bit of ups and downs with Rajapaksa, but then the Sri Lankans went back to Rajapaksa because whatever may be his fault, yes, corruption was definitely a fault. But then, as I said, you know, primitive accumulation, if you call it primitive accumulation, it becomes easy, you know, and you can't have development without corruption. You know, you show me one country in the world which had development but no corruption. They, after development, then they started, you know, building all those structures, but of governance. You know, South Asia can't afford colonialism or slavery of that kind. So yes, Human Development Index, I think it is very, very important in order to get the grassroots come up and vote. I think one issue that has not been talked about, maybe, you know, Swati probably, she will be in better position, is the issue of humiliation. You know, I think Bengali women in West Bengal felt humiliated by some of the statements that were done, some of the rhetoric.
Yes, I'll be coming to that. I'll be coming to that, absolutely.
And humiliation plays a role in human behavior immensely.
Okay, and before I'm coming to actually the women issues, you actually kind of handholded me to the issue. Is it coincidence and at the same time is contributing that both Bangladesh and West Bengal are led for a considerable time by a woman leader? Does it help? Does it help in kind of embracing the women issues in a better way, Professor Ahmed?
It does, in fact, and I can share the letter that Mamata Banerjee wrote to Sheikh Hasina. I don't know whether you have seen the letter.
Yes, I have seen that letter,
Yeah.
yes.
But, I just, those who have not, just one line, I think would help you understand. Dui Banglar Moddhe Bhogalik Shimarekha Thakleo Chinta Chetona Monone Amra Eki Apore. That's a fantastic
absolutely,
line.
Absolutely.
I think that's a superb line. I don't know who drafted it, but absolutely, touches the soul. So it helps in many ways. And both are very experienced politicians. Don't forget, they had years of, what you call politics almost in their blood. Well, people talk about Sheikh Hasina, given her family issues and all. But I always pointed out that for God's sake, when Bangabandhu was there, he never promoted his daughter. His daughter became a politician on her own. She fought in the party on her own. People make that mistake. People think that, it was just a, kind of
hierarchical politics,
which is not.
Okay. It's very interesting. We're coming very interesting discussion on the women and the election in the last West Bengal election. Before I go to Shati, let's go back to Biswanath Chakrabarty. Give us the figure of the women. How women voted in the last election, and if it's possible, do we have any breakup of, say, rural voting and urban voting? Do we have any data on that? How the rural voting went gender-wise, and how it went the kind of urban sector? Biswanath Chakrabarty.
So Jayanta, actually we have the figure based on the opinion poll.
Sure. So
what I am trying to share with you, that is based on opinion poll.
Sure.
So according to opinion poll, the 52% women, they express their view to us that they would like to support Mamata Banerjee for her developmental role.
52.
So 52. Okay. Huge. If you compare with the women section, the response we got in from women section, that was only 43%. So it's a huge gap, 9% gap. So and the thing is that now, by and large, the young girls, but those who are engaged in school education, college education, and university education, Konyasri 1, Konyasri 2, 3, they are recipients of Konyasri 1, 2, 3. And also they got the assistance from the TMC government in the form of the tab, 10,000 cash directly transferred to the HS student. So altogether, we got a huge support from this category of women, young women. But at the same time, I must, young women. So at the same time, I must say, those who pass out from university and colleges, they are unemployed. They actually level, and there was a strong the anti-government feeling also we have observed.
Okay.
So there are two categories, but by and large, I must say that 52% women supported Mamata Banerjee during our opinion poll, and this is huge in comparison.
This is both in urban and rural areas, cutting across rural and urban areas?
Cutting across rural and urban areas.
So both areas, women are voting much more.
It's very difficult to get the standard deviation between rural and urban area.
Great. Let's go to Shati with that particular figure. Shati, we were discussing before, specific. Let us go to the specifics. If you look at the series of programs, Mamata Banerjee has been taking programs on social assisted programs. New thing. But whether Prashant Kishore or whatever, the last 1.5 years after parliament election, she took number of programs. And if we look at the programs, many of the programs are kind of identifying women as the focus. Even if I think Shastro Shati, the woman head of the family, has to sign in the top. So like that kind of thing. So do you feel that Shastro Shati, Duare Sarkar, and this all series of programs in the later part of this tenure, in the last 5 years, did they kind of change, tilted the support in a game-changing manner? Was there, let me have a very straight question, did the Shastro Shati, Duare Sarkar, they were game changers for Mamata, with women particular in focus?
Well, they certainly set the mood in which the later games could were played out, I would say. And you are right. I think that, you know, as I was saying, with women, survival is a big issue. And because we are a poorer state, for many, many of our women, perhaps after the lockdown and the utter economic impoverishment since the COVID pandemic, survival has become the major issue for majority of our women. And therefore, for them, this whole Mamata immediately declared free food. And this was a huge help, you know. I mean, all the women that I have talked to say that we could survive through all those months. And even now we can think of surviving because we have 5 kgs of free grain. And also along with this, the children are getting a lot of grains from the mid-day meal. So this gives them a basic sustenance, which is very important for them. And I will actually quote Professor Biswanath Chakrabarty. He said something very interesting to me. He was talking about patron-client relationship. But there is every government tries to establish a patron-client relationship. CPM also, I mean, the left front also did. But there is a major difference. The left front did a lot of what we call Amra Ora, us and them. So by excluding, they tried to build their own voter base. But Mamata, I think very wisely, has extended her programs actually, really, to the entire gamut. So nobody is left out of the Khadyo Shati program or the Konyashri or any of those things, maybe a very few, but most of the social assistance programs are majorly, you know, administered by the block officials and free of that kind of party partisanship. This has given the women a lot of confidence. And in one of in my interviews, Professor Chakrabarty has rightly, you know, he gave a good instance saying that if you are already occupying a seat, would you try for a better seat? You know, the uncertainty, thinking that this seat might be better. So because I was asking him that, okay, Konyashri is still, you know, 25,000 rupees and the BJP has offered 2 lakh rupees.
Yes.
So why not? Why not try the BJP? And the certainty that you will get something. And again, in Konyashri 2 and Konyashri 3. So those things where the certainty, which has already been established, has been very important to the women because people who want survival want certainty.
Exactly.
Now the Shastro Shati along with it, I think, Kumar, Rana and Mahalaya will probably correct me if I am wrong, but you know, apart from adding the women's name in the land title, what we call patta, apart from that, which was done in the left front, I think that this is the first major recognition of a woman as head of family.
Yes, absolutely.
That has never come before. And I think that this has given immense, confidence to the women. And, and that is why this mood of this upbeat mood of confidence, whether the Shastro Shati card actually gives them the proper.
That's a different, but that whole.
But this thing that state recognizes a woman as the head of a household, because Mamata has given that kind of recognition, I think women found it very difficult to accept the kind of insult that the BJP leaders were throwing on Mamata, the humiliation that, you know, they were heaping on her, all kind of insinuations and very, bad words.
That whole campaigin of Bangla May, that she is our daughter, that rings with the woman at large, actually.
Amar Ghorer Me.
Amar Ghoren mein. She's
So
part of us.
she's part of my family. She's part of my
family.
home.
And also very interesting, Shati, is that
cultivated that image.
Also very Shati, interesting. You definitely agree that despite so many corruptions and other things being kind of complaint being raised about these various other programs, these programs apparently even the oppositions, they couldn't make much complaint about being politicizing. This Duare Sarkar or Shastro Shati, even I saw that even the BJP state head Dilip Ghosh's family stood in the line to take card of Shastro Shati. So it really kind of, Biswanath, Professor Chakrabarty may let it tell better, that it really didn't have the smack of that corruption it had seen Amphan or other factors that might have also won. But let me go to Kumar Rana here. We have about 10-12 minutes. I really would like to talk about the corruption of development in a very quick way before I complete with this round of women. What do you feel, general, you talked about the Shastro Shati, not really that part, but what do you feel, Mr. Rana, about the overall role of women-centric politics of Mamata Banerjee and the dividend that it has given?
Well, it's very paradoxical. It's very paradoxical because on one hand, she is talking about the women. It's like the the NGO programs of women's empowerment, keeping or making the women more women. I mean, giving them the programs of stitching, binding, rolling, etc., these sort of things they have been doing for years. So Mamata Banerjee's programs kind of follow that line, that keeping the women more women. I mean, on one hand, they are getting what Sati said rightly, that they are getting the confidence. But on the other hand, if you look at the data, that in West Bengal, 40% of the women, the recent NFHS survey, 1920, that says 42% of the women got married before 18 years of age. So those things, I mean, these paradoxes have to be, the problem is these things are not much, the details are not much discussed, neither in academia nor at societal level. So similarly, if you go to the school education sector, so you are giving the, I mean, fine, I mean, it's very, the kind of, so what is happening, Konyasri becoming some sort of allocative justice rather than redistributive justice.
Okay.
So you are not making anything for the school education better. Nothing. School education in West Bengal is perhaps, I mean, it was worst.
In fact, I should be kind of, I should here point out, as because I was pointing out the comparison of Modi and Mamata in Sustainable Development Goals score. Education is one of the key areas where actually Modi did better than Mamata. Out of all the factors of Sustainable Development Goals, I saw in education, Modi scored 58 and Mamata scored 50. So that's the only main sustainable development point where Modi actually did better.
No, actually, if you compare between Gujarat and West Bengal, then West Bengal does better. Okay, so those sort of comparisons, I don't think we should make such kind of comparison. I mean, it is useless, because thing is that education is something. It is education. Education means you enable people to ask questions. So that's your goal. So whether we have been able to do that or not, that's the main.
That's another thing. But as you said, this paradox actually, despite the paradox, Mamata Banerjee could take this woman's support with her and kind of, I think, in a clinching manner in the last election, despite the paradox.
Yes.
Let's go to Mahalaya. Mahalaya, we are talking about the urban scenario, and Professor Chakrabarty said that even in urban areas, women voted, or in the opinion poll, it showed that they would be voting more in favor of Mamata Banerjee. How do you explain that?
No, one of the reason is not only, and what we are looking at one side, that what Mamata did and what he got back. And there is another point of view. That is, every day we are looking at what is happening in the BJP ruled states. What is the status of women? The stories of rapes and other things. That I think also mattered. Apart from what Mamata did, that the positive part, the negative part is the negative feedback from the BJP states and horror stories and something like that. That also talk for women that maybe we are safer under Mamata compared to if BJP comes to power. The so-called quote-unquote what
Shati was saying the uncertainty. Uncertainty. Shati was saying the uncertainty
the Monubadi ideal where women will be sent back to home again. That definitely mattered to urban women who are more confident, who are more, what should I say, they are more self-reliant, and others, they did not like these ideas.
Okay.
These ideas going back to a Monubadi regime.
Okay. We have a fascinating range of discussion, but let's talk about the last 10 minutes about the so-called perils of development and electoral politics. When you are pumping in so much money in the so-called developmental initiative, be it Konyasri, be it Ruposri, be it everything else, there are bound to be corruption. Even we see in the post-Amphan management, there's a huge cry, and even Mamata accepted that there were corruption and asked people to give back money. That's a fascinating point, that giving back the money that you have kept and people have accepted it. That's a different thing. But Biswanath, what's your take on that? How you analyze this, the women issues and also the corruption? Despite the corruption, Mamata owned answer.
The huge dissident voters were there against Mamata on the question of corruption. But what happened then? Why anti-incumbency did not work? This is simply identity politics. When I asked, even I told in a television channel that when we visited in different minority area for collection of data, we asked people and we got their resentment against Mamata government. But when we asked the minority young people who is not getting job, but still he is saying or she is saying that no, we voted for TMC because we want to prevent BJP. So it is the identity politics that actually prevent the corruption matter. Otherwise, I must say that there was a huge dissentment among the voters against Mamata government on the question of corruption. But development actually brought also discontent among the voters, and there was a strong discontent among the voters. I have noticed. I have observed at the village level. But finally, it is the identity which actually driven the voters to cast their vote.
Okay. I think I have a point here.
Sure.
It is not just identity. The class also matter. Class issue. Across South Bengal, I don't know North Bengal. Across South Bengal, the working class, the poorer class, they saw BJP a kind of the party of the rich. So this division and the traditional vote of the left, they went to the.
So that matters.
It's a combination of many things. It's not simply one. No, it's not just identity politics. Identity politics did matter, but there were other issues as well.
Just I would like to give one input. I would like to give one input. Very interesting, because we have now compiled data result. So we got in a scheduled caste area, a Dalit area, BJP got much more vote than the general caste area. Even in the scheduled tribe area, BJP got much more vote in this election even than the general caste area. So though it is very difficult to say that the poor people did not cast their vote in favor of BJP. It is not the poor and rich. The important was definitely
it's not poor and rich. Definitely, it's not poor versus rich. It's not really development versus non-development. There's definitely a matrix of issues, but every issue has played its own role. Shati, very quickly, you have seen very closely how this corruption vis-a-vis development mattered. Do they really matter, that corruption or the development takes away the whole thing?
I think that, we as media and the opposition have failed to address the real issues of corruption. See, there are ways of corruption in which the BJP and the Trinamool are so similar that they wouldn't raise those issues. But we should have, media should have, civil society should have, we should have questioned whether, with the whole thing became Shastro Shati, whole thing became Krishak Bondhu or PM Cares, Shastro Shati or Jan Arogya Yojana. But we did not ask whether development can be driven by an insurance-only model, when the basic structures of health or agriculture are not being developed at all. There is no state investment in the basic structures of healthcare or agriculture, if you come to see. So, or in livelihood, any kind of livelihood. Okay, and the basic issues of inequality.
Missed. Those
were completely missed. Those did not come up. The whole thing became, I'm very ashamed to say as a media person, the whole thing became what this Neta, this leader is saying against that leader, and how that leader is rebutting against this.
I think I completely agree with you that I have kind of seen election for last few elections, number of elections, so many years. I think Shati will agree with me that, or all of you agree that I think this is one of the, from the quality was one of the poorest election campaign I have ever seen. Rarely people talk about the issues. One prime minister talking about a woman chief minister in a manner that we all know, and the chief minister also talking about the prime minister and the other senior leaders in a manner that we all know. So it's the election campaign had come down to that level. The real issues get missed, definitely. And also I think media, we also have to take part of that blame. Let me very quickly go to Mahalaya first, and then I'll conclude with Imtiaz Ahmed. Mahalaya, what's your take on that? Because in the urban setup, a lot of talks about the corruption and everything vis-a-vis these developmental projects. But end of the day, that didn't matter.
The point is that everybody knows corruption is there.
So we have already all accepted that corruption will be there.
Corruption has become a way of life.
So corruption is a way of life.
Be there, yes. But what is coming out of corruption? Corruption is a way of life. Once upon a time, we used to say that when the market will take over and we will not have to stand in queue for a telephone connection or a gas connection, and we don't have to pay bribe. But now all these things have taken a different form. Different form you cannot, perhaps we have accepted it. So that with every idea about the so-called quote-unquote chalchor and others, that ultimately that doesn't matter. The other issues become very important, but as you were saying, I have never seen an election in my life with so much of personalized slangs and other things being headed over by
people call it a Japanese model. People call it a Japanese model that you may be corrupt, but if you are functional, that's fine. And with, I think, in the late hours, this series of Trinamool leaders who are having those kind of stamp in their dress about corruption, switching over to BJP, and people actually get confused. End of the day, who is corrupt and who is not, and that's a very bizarre kind of situation. And yes, I think you are right that people have accepted corruption as part of the life, so doesn't matter really. Let's go to finally to Imtiaz Ahmed. Now the corruption has become a part of the life. So is it, because I remember, if I'm wrong, Biswanath, Professor Chakrabarty may correct me, that Bofors was all about 67 crores. And if today you talk about the corruption of even a councillor, it is more than 200 crores. So that's the way the world has changed. The Bofors was all about 67 crores and all over the up and roar about the Rajiv Gandhi. And now it doesn't matter. People talk about 600 crores, 6,000 crores, and nothing about it.
Don't simplify this way. Say, for instance, if I am a recipient of a Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana project, so I am getting 70,000 rupees and 50,000 rupees is snatching by a local leader, then definitely I shall not be happy with government.
Corruption becomes a livelihood process. So, Professor Ahmed, what is very fascinating actually, that corruption becoming a livelihood process. We in Murshidabad at one point of time, when every monsoon the kind of river gives away, people say that that's the whole industry in Murshidabad. The contractors trying to build kind of amendments and the money being rolled with that. So that's the industry in Murshidabad at one point of time. What do you feel, Professor Ahmed, about the South Asia overall corruption and development? We have not much time, very quickly.
Well, the good example again would be Sri Lanka and Rajapaksa. You know,
so
they can really go to house and house at one point of time and give some of the money that they have earned.
But Professor Chakrabarty, then also the mathematics comes
in a different way.
Most people.
So corruption, yes, but one should not. I don't think that's the important part in South Asia.
Yes, that's very important in South Asia. Corruption is there, but not really that critical part in determining the final outcome. Last question, one word answer. Did development matter in the last election? If you get a score of 10 to 0. If it doesn't matter at all, 0. If it mattered fully, 10. What's your take? Let's start with Mahalaya. Mahalaya, what's your take on that? A scale of 0 to 10, how much will give development in the election result?
6.
6. Which, Professor Chakrabarty?
5 development, 5 identity politics.
Oh, 5 development. I'm taking the development part. I'm keeping aside the other part. 5. Shati?
50% development, 50% identity
development.
Politics.
Fine. Shati?
7.
7. That's interesting. Kumar, Rana?
I won't answer because this is
you feel that
kind of answer. No, it's a whole range of issues are there. And if you call this development, I'm sorry, I can't agree with you.
So you don't feel that this should be. Professor Ahmed, as an outsider, what's your take on that? How much score you will give?
I'll go with Mr. Rana on this. Because politics is too complex to
not to really.
Yeah.
But the 3 answers that you have got is around 50%. Around 50%. So it shows that development may not be a completely clinching issue in an election process, as I completely go with Kumar, Rana and Professor Ahmed, that elections, especially in South Asia, in India, is too much complicated to kind of identify or to ascertain that one aspect kind of dominates very well. But it also shows from the discussion that we have for the last 1 hour, development matters. Development matters. Developmental actions matter. Various leaders, various political parties pan out in a different way. At least in 2021 election, Mamta did it successfully and ran away with a win, not only for development, but also for the other factors, identity politics, as Professor Chakrabarty was pointing out. There's a matrix of issues, but development also mattered. That's what came out. I think a fascinating discussion. Thank you for your time. Another day, another time, but I think we'll continue to discuss on this point. Thank you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.